Every November, for the last many years, we were treated to remarks from our beloved Mandell Bill Berman. In honor of his birthday, he would bound up the steps. Do you remember that? He didn't walk. He never took the railing. He would quite literally fly up the stairs with a big smile on his face to share memories, often about the house that Bill built, as this synagogue is in so many ways. I specifically remember a couple of things that he would always point out. One of them is the stained glass in the back of the room. And he used to talk how Rabbi Adler, of blessed memory, would chide Bill and say, "Here you've built this beautiful stained glass for the congregation to look at." But the rabbi would say, "What about me? What am I going to look at?" So sure enough, Bill built that stained glass up there for Rabbi Adler, of blessed memory. The other thing that stands out very clearly among the stories that Bill loved to share is that this bima was rigged with a trap door. And you can't see it, but there's a clock right here built right into the shulchan. And Bill used to say he would tell every rabbi who would stand on this blessed bima that if that clock hit 18 minutes, the trapdoor would open and the rabbi would fall right in. I've always taken that to heart. You wonder why I walk up and down. He was a blessing for all of us. Now we're going to speak a little bit formally about Mandell Berman, what he has accomplished. But for us, he was Bill, the man who loved to sit right over there on Shabbos, right there on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, who sometimes sang a little too loudly, but always with such joy and with such passion. He was a blessing for all of us. A Detroit native who attended the city's public schools, Mandell Berman graduated from Central High School in Detroit with high distinction. He went on to graduate from Harvard College, you know, the Michigan of the East. From Harvard College, magna cum laude in 1940, and received his MBA from Harvard Business School in 1942, after which he served for 4 years as a naval officer in World War II. In 2011, he received an honorary Doctor of Laws from Wayne State University in Detroit. He's also been chosen as a Fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. Married to Madge Berman, and please let your mom know she's with us today very much, and maybe even watching on live stream, but we're definitely thinking about her. We're honored now to have Bill and Madge's family with us this morning. Bill Berman was a past president of the Council of Jewish Federations, a past president and chairman of the executive committee of the Metro Detroit Jewish Welfare Federation. He was the first chairman of the Skillman Foundation, past chair investment committee, UJC and JDC, a chair of the United Israel Appeal, the board of the Jewish Agency, and the board of the World Zionist Education Authority. He's a former board member of the Michigan Humane Society, Detroit Zoological Society, the DSO, and the Michigan Opera Theater. He was an honorary board member of the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee. Among the many awards presented to Mr. Berman were the Butzel Award, the community's highest honor, the Lown Award from Boston Hebrew College, an award from the American Jewish Committee. He was part of the Hall of Fame of the Builders Association of the Southeastern Michigan. He received an Achievement Award from Michigan State Association of Home Builders, the Israeli Peace Medal in 1991, an award from Jesna, Human Relations Award from the Interfaith Roundtable, the Leonard Simon History Award, honorary Doctorate of Laws degrees from Wayne State, and as I mentioned, in 2013, he was named a Fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. Just a few of the Berman's philanthropic interests. They founded the Berman Jewish Policy Archive at Stanford University. He was a founder of the Mandell Berman Center at University of Michigan Hillel. And I'll note I saw Tilly during the Hakafah. And amazing, on this day of sacred battle, Tilly would come, of course, this morning to honor Bill Berman. Bill was a past chair of the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, a founder of the Mandell Berman North American Jewish Data Bank at the Jewish Federation of North America, the Mandell Berman Fund for Research on Children with Disabilities, the Myers JDC Brookdale Institute in Israel. He was a founder of Jewish Experiences for Family, Jeff in Detroit. We welcome Lisa Sobel-Siegman representing that long-standing relationship, and I know, Lisa, how close the two of you were. Bill was a chair in 1990 and 2001 of the National Jewish Population Studies, an officer for 14 years of Congregation Shaarey Zedek, where he was the building chairman of this Southfield building, at the time the largest Jewish religious structure in the world. He was on the Clover Hill Park Cemetery Board, and he was part of the Berman Center, and he helped found the Berman Center for the Performing Arts at the JCC in Detroit. Bill Berman was passionate about animal care and was involved with the Berman Center for Animal Care, the Michigan Humane Society, the DIA, the DSO, the Michigan Humane Society, the Opera Theater, Henry Ford Health Systems, Beaumont Health Foundation, Wayne State University, American Promise School, the College for Creative Studies, Eastern Michigan, Forgotten Harvest, Gleaners, the Skillman Foundation, and the University of Michigan Medical Research. It's now my pleasure, after reading just a snippet of Bill's resume, to invite a longtime friend of Mr. Bill Berman and to represent Bill's incredible dedication to this community as expressed through the Jewish Federation of Metro Detroit. Our friend, our community leader, the professional head of the Jewish Federation of Metro Detroit, Scott Kaufman.
Thank you, Rabbi. It is indeed an honor to be here today. A friend of Detroit's, many of you have met, an educator from Israel, Mandell, once said, "Other people have history, but the Jews, we have memories." And I think almost everyone in our community had a personal memory of some interaction with Bill. I'm glad I didn't have to go through the litany of things that Bill, organizations and roles and leadership positions, because that was sort of the Cliff Notes version. The long version, we'd be here till kickoff, which would present a problem for some of us. Within the Federation and the Federation system, Bill played roles locally, nationally. He was as you know, the campaign chair and the president of our Federation, as well as the Council of Jewish Federations nationally. Rabbi Starr talked about data and some of the organizations, the Berman Policy Archive at Stanford, the Jewish Data Bank. Bill was way ahead of the curve on data. Data is now how you run organizations. It's a key piece of that. And he was literally decades ahead, and the Jewish community is finally catching up, mostly because of his leadership and influence. Informal Jewish education was an area as well where Bill was truly a pioneer. He, as experiential activities, experiential Jewish moments, have become one of the key drivers of building Jewish identity and a sense of Jewish community and Jewish peoplehood, which 56 years ago, that wasn't the model. People were living in tight-knit Jewish communities geographically, their lives centered around Jewish facilities, JCCs, synagogues. Very different world today, and the emergence of this sense of informal, experiential Jewish education has been kind of what's kept us from wandering too far off. It's really one of the great drivers of community, and Bill was a pioneer in that, and that impact is felt locally and nationally. But of all the sort of giant Jewish figures that I've personally known, I think Bill was the most approachable, the least intimidating. He was maybe the most fun. He was this positive energy guy, the bouncing up the stairs. That was kind of captured the essence of that. He would get excited about like little things all the time. You would think a person of his stature that wouldn't register, but he would always, "Oh, Scott, did you see that?" He would be just passionate, and it was contagious. He brought the energy up of those around him, and I think to some degree the energy of our community, which is uniquely you could count on one hand the types of Jewish communities that are as strong as Detroit, and he really was the embodiment of that. I'm going to share a few personal memories, and I'm going to jump around because Bill's footprints and are in so many places in Jewish Detroit. One happened Thursday. A new neighbor of mine, a young couple who just had a newborn, was walking by my house, and the fella said, "You're the Federation guy, right?" And usually the conversation doesn't go well from there. It's usually an airing of grievances or something like that, but this wasn't that. This was this young man said, "I want to thank you guys for this J-Baby program." Now, J-Baby's part of our Jewish family education. I didn't see Lisa, but I hear someone with better eyesight says she's here. And Bill was really the person who built this concept of family education. And this young man described that they recently moved here, and they signed up for this class, one, because they wanted to know what to do when the baby arrives, and two, as an opportunity to meet people and build a cohort. And the class is somewhat like you would take maybe at a hospital, but it adds a Jewish overlay. So meetings with rabbis and Jewish educators and young couples who had the same experience the year before. And he was saying how it's amazing, and now there's a play group with the babies who were born from the group, and now they have a social life, and what an inviting community, and they knew what to do mostly when the baby came. So it was like an incredible thing, and while Bill didn't invent that specific program, he laid the groundwork and kind of built the ecosystem for us to innovate like that. In November coming up is the General Assembly of the Jewish Federations of North America. Now, Bill, kind of like Joe DiMaggio's hitting streak or Cal Ripken's consecutive games, Bill's streak of like 50 straight GAs, that's a record that will never be broken. It's the conference of all the federations in North America. And one of the highlights of the GA for me in the years I've been attending was Bill loved to meet with the young people. He'd love to meet with the Hillel students, particularly those from the University of Michigan. And he would invite them to his suite to talk, and each year there'd be more kids. And the suite would stay the same size. So it would like just packed with people, and Bill would speak, and the young people would pick up on his energy. And last November I met with the students, and then without Bill. And while I tried to pick up some of the slack, it definitely was different. The loss was felt. But the legacy of these young people who Bill invested so much in, they're already making a difference in the Jewish world, I think is a wonderful legacy. I knew Bill as well from a business standpoint. Bill was a partner and investor with my father for many, many years, decades. And my dad always said to me that the test of a partner is not in a good deal, it's in a bad deal. And Bill's one of those guys whose community ethics and business ethics were exactly the same. I don't want to say that's rare, but it's not always the case. And he really was that. They had a lot of good deals. They had one not so good deal. It was an East Side land deal right before the housing market collapsed. And I remember after a meeting with Bill and Mort Harris, the other partner, my dad talked to me about what a mensch Bill was in dealing, how he handled what was really their first and hopefully only crummy deal. And that spoke a lot about character, it spoke about the person, and maybe why he was so good to the community, because he was a guy who did the right thing. I wish I could share with Bill. I had lunch with a dear friend of his, Mort Harris, last week, 2 weeks ago. And Mort, at 97 years old, just had returned from his first ever trip to Israel. And Bill would often complain to me, I wish Mort would get more involved in the community. I wish he cared about the Jewish community like I did, and that would be a story. Mort came back with kind of a Bill Berman-like energy when he was retelling the story of his trip, and I said, Mort, what was the highlight? Highlight? The whole thing was highlights. And he went for a litany. It was like a 2-hour discussion. And if Bill could have seen that, he would have been so proud, because he was very close with Mort, a dear friend. And Bill worked on that a long time, and we finally got him across the finish line. He's like the oldest birthright participant ever. Bill loved Camp Tamarack. The new Berman village, summer of 16, Bill was able to go and visit Berman Village. And to the kids, Berman Village is a place. It's like Disney World or Washington, D.C. The idea that there's a person, when they met him, it was like they met Justin Bieber, some sort of rock star. And I remember from that day hearing from my sister Robin, who was there, that Bill noticed one kid, he wanted to see one of the bunks, so the little girls were touring him in the bunks, and one little girl's shelves were perfectly neat. Everything was folded. Only one, which is not surprising for parents who have camp-age children. So he made a big deal of it. So we have to take a picture, and we have to send it to the parents, and this is amazing. And the kid felt so great. But that was, whether it's Hillel or the summer camp or day schools, Bill loved kids, and is a community that, obviously keeping the next generation engaged is our success. That's our secret sauce to why this community will sustain, and Bill understood that. Bill and Madge did something many years ago that I think was remarkable, and it speaks to the secret sauce of what makes Jewish Detroit great. As I go around the country, I see federations that are heavily professionally driven. I see some where it's totally lay-driven and the professionals just sort of execute things that someone else tells them to do. In Detroit, it's a partnership. It really is, in thought and in deed. And I think that's reflected and maybe even a result of the Berman Award for Professional Excellence. The fact that they thought that Bill and Madge cared enough and understood the value of the Jewish community, communal professional, to endow that award, and not only endow it, present it. And we always look forward to Madge's presentation. Those of you who've seen her speak, she has an incredible way with words and a sort of a drama to it that really was something special. That really, even the communal professionals who don't get the award, that day is a big deal. And one of my highlights was the dinner afterwards that Bill and Madge would host. It always had dessert. We never didn't get spumoni or something, and Bill always insisted, we have to have dessert. This is a celebration. We're staying for dessert. And he loved that dinner. My one regret is this year's winner, Lee Treppick, who's here, who also has that kind of crazy off-the-chart energy. Won't be able to have that dinner, but Lee, I'll bring spumoni to your house. When Bill passed away, just to give you a sense of his impact on the communal professionals, some of the people who were most impacted, the tears in my office among my teammates, were our very youngest employees. And I kind of, I know Bill was important, but they told me that, we would have lunch with Bill all the time, or coffee, or we'd go see him. I didn't know this. This wasn't part of like a strategic plan, go meet with the donor. Bill would reach out to them. How's it going? Want to hear what's going on? And apparently he did that with so many people in this community. Nobody else did that. That's remarkable. One time, he was even active in our recruiting. I saw High Saffron here, and one time I worked at the Federation, and I mentioned to Bill we were trying to get High to join our team. And his eyes lit up, and he started telling me stories about High's grandfather, High Saffron, a blessed memory. And he described somebody, and not in these words, but the picture I got was somebody with the presence of a Max Fisher, but the kind of people, common man touch of like a David Hermelin. And I thought as I'm driving home, in some ways that's what Bill was. He was a man of incredible presence, but also a man of the people. I could give you a list of 100 community professionals, Lisa and High and Tilly and on, Bob Aronson, who built deep friendships with Bill, and it really was a mentor to many of them. So I'm going to end with two recollections really that occurred in the last week. First, I'm going to have a sip. My last conversation with Bill was a few days after last year's Max Fisher meeting, our biggest fundraising event for the Federation. And in typical Bill excitement, he was Scott, I couldn't believe how many young people were there. And young being relative, it was, and new people, and I didn't know half of them, and that's so exciting. And he really, in a sense, paying forward and building a future. He talked about that, and we were worried coming into this year's Fisher meeting. We had a number of traditional donors who weren't with us anymore, and it was 7 or 8 new people, first-time people who kind of bridged the gap for us and made it a very positive evening. And at that moment, I thought of Bill, how that 60% of the people in that room weren't there 5 years ago, and many of them he influenced and mentored. He always made time for those coming up behind him, but more importantly, made room for them in leadership, which is an important lesson. And finally, last Shabbat on Yom Kippur, I had really one of the great honors of my life, to carry the Torah, something I had never done before in this very room. And I didn't expect it to be so powerful and so emotional. I just come back from Israel less than 48 hours earlier, had a very intense and positive trip there. And while I was sort of walking through a sea of people, I sort of got lost in the moment, and almost literally lost, because I couldn't see where the aisle was, and it was a good thing Howard Krugel was there, because he's very tall, and I was able to figure out just follow Howard. But I had a number of memories. I had memories about my own grandfather, who was the president of his congregation in Chicago. I saw so many faces of people I knew from various points of life, going back to elementary school and camp and college and all kinds of things. I saw many community leaders, co-workers, but there was one face that I sort of expected to see, because every time I came here, I'd see him, which was Bill. But his presence was felt. It was felt here really maybe more than any other place in this community. He loved shared Zedek. He would always give the self-deprecating lines. I remember when he met with the campers, he would talk about, who's a shared Zedek member? Well, be careful, don't touch the walls, because the building might fall over, because I built it. That was part of his shtick. But I know Bill would have called my mother if she wasn't there and said, Scott, carry the Torah and say something, because that's the kind of man she was. But his presence, so many of us, lay, professional, are better community members because of the time we got to spend with Bill Berman, and that is one heck of a legacy. So really, this is, last week I said I had one of the great honors of my life. This week was again one of the great honors. So thank you, Rabbi Starr, thank you, Shared Zedek, and thank you to the Berman family for lending us your dad and your grandfather. Really, words can't really express it. I used up a lot of words, so maybe his impact on Jewish Detroit and really the Jewish people were a blessing. Thanks.
I was at the Federation annual meeting this last week, and Ben Rosenthal, he said in his thank you to his kids, he said, sharing their father with the community is one of the great acts of tzedakah that they performed. So we, of course, need to give our thanks to the entire Berman family for sharing Bill with us. It was a great act of tzedakah that you all performed for this community, for this congregation. So thank you and yasher koach. We've heard this morning, of course, Bill had so many passions. His first love was indeed his family. And never did an opportunity go by that I didn't have lunch with him or get together, that I was caught up on all the latest news and adventures and travels and blessings, the joy that his family provided him. But Bill's second love was, of course, this community. He believed in the exceptionalism of Congregation Shaarey as a different, unique, and sacred community. And we are honored to carry on his legacy each and every day with what we do, as we proudly hold the Berman Center for Jewish Education here at Congregation Shaarey, a resource not just for our sacred family, but for the entire community, for youth education, for family education, for adult education. And I invite everyone after the service and after the nice lunch. Bill always liked a good lunch, especially the lox. Hopefully we'll enjoy the lox a little bit later on. Maybe after you get your lox. I invite you back into the Berman Center for Jewish Education. Just walk around a little bit. You'll see the special display cases that we've dedicated to the memory of Mandell Bill Berman, a blessed memory, a lasting tribute to what he did for this community. But more importantly, may that name, may those display cases, may the legacy of Bill Berman inspire all of us to communal action, to strengthening the Jewish people, to supporting Congregation Shaarey Zedek. And in my many conversations with Bill, and he'd say, "Oh, how did this Jewish family education program go?" And of course, my first response would be to tell him how many people showed up. And he'd say, "No, Rabbi. How do you know if you made an impact?" That was his question. How do you know if you made an impact? Mandell Bill Berman made an impact. He made an impact on this congregation. He made an impact on this community. He made an impact on the Jewish people. Thank you for your act of tzedakah and sharing him with us and with our people. May God continue to comfort the Berman family and all of us among the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. And may the name of Mandell Bill Berman be remembered now and always for a true and lasting blessing. And let us say together,